Paula Bruneheim, at least until Saturday when I'm getting married, so coming back next week in a new form and shape. Thank you. Before I actually start my presentation, I wanted to tell you about something that happened to me this weekend. So, as most of you probably know, it was a long weekend here in Sweden, so me and my family decided to go on a little trip to Copenhagen. And we came to the airport, and for some reason we had to check in by the check-in counter, so I walked up and handed over our passports and the booking number, and then the typing began. She was writing and writing and clicking and clicking. I was wondering if she was composing a novel back there. But Swedish as I am, I didn't really dare to ask what she was doing, and after what felt like an eternity, we finally got our boarding passes and could pass through security. A few hours later, we arrived at the hotel in Copenhagen, and I had the same experience. I walked up to the check-in counter, handed over our passports and booking number to Mikkel, who was working that day, and then he started typing. And this time I actually dared to ask, "Sorry, Mikkel, what are you writing back there?" "Oh, sorry, I'm doing this as fast as I can." And yeah, that's not what this is about. It's just that I work for a company who try to find developers who actually build systems like this. And then me and Mikkel started talking, and he said, "I'm so sorry to hear that you're in that business. I heard that AI is taking over all those jobs." So this was not really the turn of the conversation that I had expected. Is Mikkel right? In that case, it's probably the last time I'm standing on a stage like this, but let's see. Anyways, Mikkel was kind enough to show me his screen. I think he must have misunderstood the concept of GDPR, because he asked me to erase all the data from my brain afterwards. Anyways, what I saw on his screen left me in shock, but we can talk more about that later. And now to my actual presentation. So what Mikkel was talking about has actually happened before. So in the end of the 18th century, James Watt made some essential improvements to the steam engine, and all of a sudden the steam engine was way more efficient, and the number of cotton factories in the UK went from 900 to 2,400 in just a few years, and the textile output in Britain alone 20-fold. The revolution, of course, came to the Nordics a little bit later, but we also saw some very powerful results of the steam engine. So Sweden went from having 20 steam engines in 1800 to more than 5,000 in 1850. The timber exports increased more than tenfold, and the number of industrial workers increased dramatically. We saw the same phenomenon in the end of the 60s, when the chemical bank said, "On September 2nd, our bank will open at 9 a.m. and never close again." And with that, they launched the first ATM in the US. When the ATMs expanded throughout the 70s and 80s, many feared that tellers, the bank employees who until then had taken care of all simpler transactions, that they would actually lose their jobs. But instead of cutting jobs massively, banks used the saved time and money to open more branches and offer new services. So tellers actually shifted their jobs more towards customer service, financial advice, and complex transactions that ATMs just couldn't handle. So actually the number of tellers employed grew. This increase in efficiency, leading to counterintuitive results, is also known as Jevons paradox. So Jevons paradox is the idea that increasing the efficiency with which a resource is used tends to increase rather than decrease the overall consumption of that resource. So basically, what I would like to say to Mikkel and his friends who are considering becoming software engineers is that the value of them actually doubles as they become more productive, as long as they are ready to adapt to the new world. Taking a breath, sorry. When it comes to developers, it's astonishing how wide the spread of productivity is. Actually, the top 25% of developers produce 6 times more output than the bottom 25%. So what do we think happens to these developers when we add AI into the mix? Stanford has done a unique study with more than 50,000 contributors to find a model to measure and evaluate productivity within tech teams. This model has already started to gain traction with giants like Facebook and Google. And what's been noticed is that the best tend to become even better with AI. So this gap actually widens. If you read your LinkedIn feed, it feels like every developer is about to lose their job to AI. But the fact is that institutions and academia have a completely different opinion. This Stanford study has also seen that junior developers actually have far bigger gains from AI than senior developers. This is also quite contradictory to what you read in mainstream media. At Proxify, where I work, what we do is that we try to find or identify these top developers. And as I'm sure many of you know, they're quite difficult to identify purely based on interviews. That's why we use a far more advanced and rigorous method when building the largest network of tech and data experts in Europe. But back to Mikkel and what I saw on his screen. I think I can summarize it in one word: shock. There were 3 different systems being used just to check us in. And he had, for example, clicked in the box non-smoker. And I said to Mikkel, "You haven't asked us this. Maybe we are a family of smokers." But turns out they only had non-smoking rooms anyways. But he has to tick that box, along with a never-ending list of other boxes. But this chaos could be built into a 5-click process. However, the hotel chain that I visited, they have 5 hotels. It wouldn't make sense, or it would be plain stupid of them to try to build their own custom system. So instead, they use a very popular property management system. We can call it hospitality. But how is this hotel supposed to be able to create a unique customer experience when they share the same system as 80% of the market? But as developers become more productive, this tipping point actually moves. So when discussing with R&D teams if they should buy off the shelf or build customized, they're actually moving more and more towards building their own stuff. So today we do have a lot of clients that build customized solutions that definitely would have bought off the shelf just 5 years ago. But this increased productivity or increased output resulting in larger code base also creates some challenges. Component entanglement happens when 2 or more components are tightly connected, and due to this, the quality of code tends to go down for every line of code written. The Software Improvement Group, a Dutch organization that focuses on analyzing and improving software quality, has studied these trends for years and found very clear patterns of code usually looking very nice and tidy in the beginning, but it becomes more and more difficult to keep it clean as the number of dependencies grow, and so does the technical depth. I'm sure many of you may recognize this. But why is code quality such an important topic that should be discussed in every C-level meeting in every single company? Well, the Software Improvement Group has also shown that if you're a company with large amounts of technical depth, you can actually resolve bugs. You resolve bugs 4 times slower. Or if you're an organization that managed to keep your code quality high, you can count on releasing features 3 times faster. So imagine putting those numbers into the calculation when discussing your roadmap for next year. But anyways, Mikkel was actually quite happy that he was in hospitality instead of software development, as he assumed that this was a more stable profession. But when the iPhone came out, no taxi driver assumed that this would jeopardize their entire career. Or when Airbnb launched, no one knew that they would become the biggest hotel chain in the world. And just like a few years ago, when the question was, is the leader in your industry digital? The answer wasn't yes or no. It was yes or not yet. And same goes for now, when asking if the leader in your industry is AI-driven. The answer is either yes or not yet. So that was actually everything from me. I guess my colleagues wouldn't be very happy if they knew I said this, but since none of them are here, I also just wanted to mention that if anyone here is interested in actually measuring the productivity of your tech team or R&D team, let me know. I'd be happy to arrange that for you. You have my LinkedIn here and my contact details. So yeah, feel free to reach out. Thank you very much.